Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and some more Victory at Seas for you guys today. So, we're going to wrap up covering some of the rules and things for the game here while we're taking a look at coasts and shorelines and shore batteries and things like that, just seeing how that interacts with the game. Now, by and large, a lot of the game is going to be, or is designed for like the larger naval engagements, things like that. So basically, out in open water with little to no terrain really of any kind. But shore battles or battles near there did happen, and this game system does also let you recreate things like that. Where maybe you're like bombarding a shoreline or dealing with other coastal defenses, things like that, attacking harbors and things like that. We've seen some of that already with some of the like submarine scenarios and rules. Other smaller vessels, PT boats and stuff like that. Mortar torpedo boats. And so on. And so, you can still have those types of battles as well. And it's really interesting to see, in like the attacker defender scenarios, how, those things can interact. And, really, can you, if you're attacking with ships, can you bring enough to bear to deal with, given area's defenses and, whatever local fleet or other assets might be there, plus any, fortifications and stuff like that. So, it's a nice change of pace from the larger just open battles, and helps you mix things up further. So again, lots of different ways to play Victory at Sea, and that's one of the nice alluring things of the game here, is that really it shouldn't ever really get stale for you. There's just so many different combinations of things you can do. Not the least of which are the time period of the war, the theater, the forces involved, and just so on and so forth. So there's just so many varied things. But coast and shorelines do have a couple pages of rules, and it is worth kind of checking it out, just because some of it can seem a little bit overwhelming, just with all the other things that are in the game too. And how you go about designing your own fortifications and stuff like that can again seem a little confusing at first, because there is actual math involved. So um, aside from just adding things up, so some of the summaries here, right? Coastal areas, beaches, islands, all kinds of things, right? So, an interesting aspect here, rules wise, right? Land blocks all line of sight, and ships can't target one another if land lies between them, though radar and beyond the horizon things are, of course, available there. No ship with a starting hull score of 10 or more may come within 1 inch of land without running aground. So, your lighter things can definitely still do that. The exception to this is any areas designated as being a harbor, wherein all ships are permitted to move. Ships that have run aground may only fire main gun, light gun, or AA battery weapon systems. In addition, they may not execute any orders or launch and recover aircraft. Flank speed is permanently reduced to 0 for the rest of the game, and they count as being stationary targets. So basically, they're stuck. There's no getting loose anymore at that point. So then, taking a look at the shore batteries, and that's kind of the meat of this section here, is basically artillery pieces employed against approaching ships. Any fleet defending land may actually purchase them, and again, just how you go about designing them is where some of the trickiness comes into play. And as it says here, right, if you're defending land, you may purchase that if the scenario allows for it, which I think most of them did, if I recall correctly. And they use all the same rules as ships, with some exceptions here. So, and some of it's pretty common sense, right? They have a flank speed of 0 because, well, they're stationary, right? Never move. So you don't have to worry about. Moving them. It's really simple. Shore batteries have structure instead of hull, but in all ways this function is basically the same. All damage is applied to a shore battery structure just as it would be to a ship's hull. They don't have traits or aircraft flights. Makes sense. Shore batteries can never be crippled, and they can never perform orders. So, being mounted on solid ground, they are exceptionally stable firing platforms, so all guns fired from shore get a +1 bonus to their attack dice when firing, which is pretty cool. So you don't have to worry about, being out in the water, and You're just a sturdy structure that can just start delivering shells. So very stable firing platforms. And when a critical hit is scored against a shore battery, use the table on the previous page to determine its effect. And so we got to cover that real briefly here, guys. So a little different than the other ones that are out there. So it's just a simple D6, extra damage as listed there. And so starting with effect number one, the shore battery now suffers -1 penalty to each attack dice roll. One random weapon is destroyed on a roll of 2 there, which that would suck, right? That's a tough one. On a 3, roll a d6 for each weapon. At the start of each attack phase, a weapon may only fire if a 4 or greater is rolled, which is almost as bad in some ways. If they're destroyed and you're just not making your rolls, you're still not shooting then. No weapons can fire in this turn or the next. That's also pretty rough. I mean, that's 2 turns of nothing, right? And then on a 5, roll dice for each weapon. On a 4 more, it's destroyed. So not just out of action temporarily, but it gets worse, right? And makes some of those earlier effects seem a little bit tame by comparison there. And then finally, a 6 is just going to reduce the structure to 0, right? It's just blown up. A lucky hit got in and maybe exploded a ammo magazine or something like that. So yeah, pretty rough there. All right, coming back here. So how do we go about creating one? And here's, again, just several steps involved. Overall, my thoughts on it are they probably could have made this a little bit easier, especially once we get to the math, and you guys will kind of see what I'm talking about. So the creation of a shore battery consists of 4 steps, right? The first 3 are basically defining the characteristics, and those include basically the number and type of weapon systems in the battery. That's fairly easy. Determine the number of structure, again, also fairly easy, and then the armor. But the 4th step then is the points cost, and that's just where, again, there's a lot involved with that. So the weapon systems, first step, basically figure out what you want, right? Generic list of guns is defined on the table to the right. We'll take a look in just a second. All their stats are there. So again, you do have just, like a one-stop shop there to check your charts real quick when you're building these. So for example, a triple 8-inch battery is 45 points because 8-inch guns cost you 15 apiece. Very simple. All the stats are there, firing arcs, the ranges, etc. So, and everything's up through 12-inch guns, fairly short range overall, right? I mean, it's not hard for a lot of ships to stay out of that 26-inch range and then just kind of attack with impunity. But the 14 and up really can start reaching out and responding in kind. And you can see the damage dice, AP, and all that fun stuff there. 16 inchers actually count as heavies. That's as big as it goes, but also fairly hefty on points. The armor values there. So again, cost, and don't be alarmed by the decimals there. That'll be explained in just a second. But that's again where some of the math comes in, and I wish they could have just figured out a simpler way of doing this. So structure, second step, right, represents both the general size of the shore battery and the amount of construction. So on the low end, like 8 structures, basically just the bare minimum. Could be even in like an open field with just some like batteries there. Up to 36, which would be like those giant Atlantic wall type of concrete structures, right? Armor, which we saw in the chart there. The degree of armor, right? So description there, what it does, and again, point cost. So 1 is no armor, sandbags, hills, built up natural bunkers, caves, and then the big concrete buildings, right? So purchasing, here's where it gets a little crazy. And so again, we had the weapon systems and the armor there. So here are the steps then for figuring this out, guys, right? So multiply the cost of each weapon system by the number of each in the battery. So we're already dealing with multiplication here. Then we're going to divide the structure by 16 and then add the armor cost, which was below here, right? Then we're going to multiply these two totals, round up to the nearest value of 10. You see what I'm getting at, right? Like, we could have probably figured out a simpler way to do this. Yes, there's different variables involved here. We got, again, weapons, structure, and armor, but I feel like this was going to turn a lot of people off to wanting to build these things if they don't feel like going through this math. Um, and it's probably going to lead to some double checking, especially if someone's like, if it's like a event of some kind and someone's fielding fortification somehow, like there's going to be a lot of double checking, I think, of points and see if people did the math right. So, for example, a shore battery they were nice enough to provide us with an example, at least. I love that, at least. A shore battery is designed with four 15-inch guns, so four of the big boys here, 24 structure, and armor 6. So the cost would be calculated as follows. And I wish they would have given us like some sort of like little structure chart to go along with things here too. Instead of just saying, oh, it's between 8 and 36, and then we just kind of move on to everything else. I feel like something could have been shown there. Not that the way it's calculated, you don't really need that, but again, I feel like this could have just been done a little bit differently. So yeah, just basically you pick a number between 8 and 36, and that's going to be your structure, right? So more is more hit points, basically. So let me put that in simpler terms. You choose how many hit points or hull, or in this case, structure you want. So whatever words you want to use to define it, but think of it that way, okay? So coming back to our example, so 4 15-inch guns, 24 structure, and armor of 6, right? So max out on the armor. Okay. So 4 15-inch guns times 40, because again, they're 40 points apiece, so is 160. Very easy so far. Now we're going to take the damage, or sorry, not the damage, the structure, right? In here they kind of, I don't know why they put 24 damage, but it should say structure here, so consistency, guys. You're already throwing in all these variables and terms and all kinds of math. At least stick with the same word, please. So let's rephrase that. 24 structure divided by 16, because that's what they tell us to divide by, is 1.5. And then for armor 6 up, the armor cost is 1. We can see that. All right, 1.0. So which is added to the step 2 value of 1.5. So basically we arrive at 2.5. Then we go back to that 160 that we reached in step 1, times 2.5, and that's where we finally get 400 points. So if you guys are tired yet, I hear you. So basically a 4 15-inch gun structure with 24 structure points or hull points, whatever. I know it's not hull. Don't go crazy in the comments on that. And basically a very tough armor of 6 is going to finally run you 400 points. So that's a lot of work to figure that out. Let us know if you have run these coastal structures and all that, these shore batteries and stuff. Let us know where you feel on that, but in your thoughts on just building those. Have you found it to be tedious? This is just sort of my first initial reaction to that. If I was approaching this with fresh eyes, it'd be like, this is a bit of work to do that. Might tend towards some of the simpler ones to figure out, but not that this is really bad, but again, for building something really quick here on the fly, you're definitely going to need to get your calculator out and do some of this if it's going to be a complicated battery, right? And this was pretty relatively benign here, right? Relatively simple. Four guns, right in the middle, kind of on total damage it can take and top end armor. So. But anyway, easy enough to understand, probably if you've done it a few times, but sort of on first glance, I feel like that's probably a little bit off-putting to deal with. So that's kind of where we're going to wrap up on that today, guys. There is a little bit more that we're going to cover in a second video, so stay tuned for that, where we're going to take a look at some sample ones, historical ones, that they're nice enough to provide us with on the following pages, and then some things that are not shore batteries, basically, but just structures, so like buildings and other stuff, lighter harbor defenses and things like that. So then you can kind of build a complete like coastal defenses and stuff like that, and then really dive into some scenarios that make use of that. So anyway, guys, let us know in the comments if you have played around with any of these for your games. There is really no terrain from them yet, as of yet. I don't know if they will release some of these types of things. Would be cool to have at some point. They kind of released some of that For Cruel Seas, so and certainly that game really is focused on a lot more of those types of scenarios where you're playing in and around the coast because you have much lighter ships that you're dealing with, and that's another area where sort of once you kind of build all things up, and if you're invested in the different games here, you can play the larger naval battles with this, and then maybe if it's part of a campaign, you could then sort of zoom in on the conflict and play something like Cruel Seas as part of the larger like naval engagement where you're really dealing with the shore in a little bit more detail, and even eventually something like switch over to bolt action or the skirmish version that they had, firefight I think they were calling it, and have some like behind enemy lines scenarios, or even some hypothetical landings and stuff, not necessarily just Normandy, but then bringing it up to 28 mil and playing with infantry and other stuff like that, and just having that sort of ecosystem of these different games for World War II. And of course, let's not forget Blood Red Skies at the same time. If you want to play any of the naval, or not naval, sorry, the aerial battles on top of that, things going on up above, you can bring that in as part of the goings on as well. So lots of fun stuff to try out. Again, just very feature rich in the variety of games that you can play with Victory at Sea here, but there's a lot to learn, and again, there's not always that consistency that we look for, I think, with some of the terminology and just some of the other inconsistencies that we tend to find sometimes when we get to like points costs and FAQs and stuff like that. But that's something for another video. Anyway, hit us up in the comments, guys. You know what to do. Smash that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Helps us continue to grow. And also, if you want to support the channel a little bit more, guys, there is a link in the description. Follow that over to Warlord. Anything you pick up there will help support the channel a little bit. Appreciate that, guys. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one.